And call this meeting to order. I'll do a roll call of planning commission members and then county commissioners. Joey Edwards.
Here.
Jason Rufo.
Here.
David Jurich.
Here.
Heather Lind here. County Commissioner Tharp.
Present.
And Commissioner Bullock.
Here.
And Commissioner Lee is not going to make it this evening. Any changes or additions to the agenda?
We don't have anything for you.
Okay, we have minutes to approve for June 8th.
Well, that would be the change, I guess.
Okay,
Yeah.
we don't have those.
So we already approved the June 8th.
Okay,
So there were some edits that we have picked up, but I think that was part of your motion, so.
Got it.
We don't have any other minutes tonight.
great. Updates from staff.
So, just wanted to remind everyone that we, are looking to start the interview process for candidates to join the planning commission. And so what we're hoping to do is set up those interviews, next week. So, traditionally, we've had the chair and vice chair, so we're gonna be looking for Heather and Joey to join us. And Matt and Elsa, through your CMO ops, you may have heard about this. We're wanting one of the members of the Board of County Commissioners to join us for those interviews as well. And so we're hoping that one of you would be interested in doing that next week. And so I think Rachel will work setting up, maybe sending out a doodle poll or maybe some other means to kind of look at what your availability is next week to interview the candidates that we have thus far. We have been running an ad in the newspaper, and if you know anyone that would like to serve on the planning commission, and you can share your lived experience of what a huge contribution it is, a meaningful contribution to the community it is. So we are still interested in receiving letters of interest for the planning commission. So if anyone knows someone, please encourage them, and we'll start these interviews next week. We currently have 2 alternate positions available and 1 regular member, with Steve Stevens and Ryan Hill's resignations. So
We have
just to let
2
you
or
know.
3 applicants that have,
We currently have 2.
okay.
Yeah, and I think we furthered those on to you, and so we'd like to start interviewing and keep looking for interested parties that might want to participate in that. So if you know anyone, please pass the information along or have them contact the department. We'd be happy to help them.
Only requirement is that they be a resident of Lake County.
Correct. And excited on to join us on Monday, 2 Mondays a month. So, great. I think that's, we're gonna get right into our presentation. I don't think we have any other updates.
Okay. And do we know C. Brian's?
That's Candace.
Oh, that.
Yeah, there you go. From the beginning, yeah. Perfect. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. So the planning department is really excited to share with you where we're at in the moratorium row lodging and event scope of work. And so tonight we're gonna go through and just look at the different use types that we're suggesting. We're gonna define them, talk a little bit about each one of them, and then we're really excited, we use AI generated modeling. So to further identify them and kind of give them an identity, as well as look at them through a spatial context, really to look at the densities and kind of the impact in real time. So we're, kind of our first stab at bringing in some modeling, but we thought that this was an appropriate way to do that. So I'm excited tonight to share with you what this can look like. And then we're gonna go through and do a comparison of the changes that we're proposing So we're gonna look at the existing code and then apply these proposed changes and take a look at that. We're gonna talk a little bit about impact mitigation, which comes in the form of standards in the code. So we're only gonna kind of briefly touch on this a little bit around emergency management. That's one area we're gonna talk about a little bit tonight. Another part of this work that we've been able to bring in that we think will be really beneficial is a CUP amendment process. So you may recall that there is no current ability to amend a CUP, and this brings in an administrative ability as well as for minor amendments, it defines that, and major amendments. We're gonna talk about that, and then we're just gonna review our timeline, what's left to do in our scope of work and where we've been. But just wanna preface that all of this work has been done. This is the culmination of all of that last work session that we shared with you, that we've gone out and we've looked at peer codes, we've met with stakeholders, we still have some stakeholder engagement left to do that we'll talk about. But this is just all of that information that we are bringing forth together and putting into where we're at right now. So we'll go ahead and get started here. We're gonna start off with just a quick reminder on this process of where we have been through the moratorium timeframe and timeline. So this may look really familiar to you, where we started at the first of the year to kind of inform all the information that we're gonna bring to you tonight. So specifically, to kind of dial into where are we today, we've got a draft code, a rough draft, that is under review and being edited. So planning department has worked on this. We've submitted it to the county attorney's office for legal review. We are looking to have a public engagement, take this out to the public in a similar fashion to what you're gonna see tonight. And we're gonna expand on it with some of the standards that we're gonna briefly touch on tonight before the end of August. And then our last stakeholder group, really focus group that we need to touch base with and have conversations around our emergency providers, which you can probably understand that is these two groups were really why we extended the moratorium. We were set to be done in August, but we have extended until October. And so largely because we needed to get this feedback and information before we could finish the work. So this just gives you a time frame that we're hoping to work with those emergency providers this week into next, and then work with Matt Hobbs on the legal review of our proposal. And then in October, we'll be looking at the actual implementation, which means our public hearing process and our adoption, and then actually applying these changes in the code. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the new use categories that we are proposing. And so the first one is semi-primitive campground. So we felt as though that the backcountry really needed to have its own unique commercial use. And that we had been using group camp to address this commercial use in the backcountry. But we've come in with a more refined approach on how we think this should actually be present in the backcountry. So it's still a conditional approval, but now this is unique to backcountry. So you're not gonna find a semi-primitive campground allowed in any other zone district. We've increased the minimum lot size from 5 acres to 20 acres. When we get to our comparison chart, this is a significant change, and we're gonna wanna kind of dive into this a little bit. So I'm gonna put a pin in this, but this is a significant change, and it does have a significant impact to it. So we wanna talk about that when we get to the comparison. And then density. So in two ways, we feel like the minimum lot size and the density really represents the intent of conservation and preservation that's prevalent within the zone district's intent and purpose. So density is restricted to no more than 32 people housed in up to 2 structures. Again, you may remember, we talked about this in our last work session, this is kind of the 10th mountain model. Melissa had looked into this and I think that that's kind of how you frame this, is that this seems to be really kind of sustainable in keeping, again, with the purpose and intent of backcountry. So those are gonna be 2 significant changes that we're gonna talk about.
Real quick, does structures include temporary?
Yes,
Okay. I just
Yeah.
want-
yeah,
It
total,
encompasses everything, okay.
everything, yeah, and traditionally, that's kind of what you're gonna see. And we're also going to be very intentional in the code about prohibiting this activity above timberline because of that impact to delicate tundra that, is you can't reverse those kind of irreversible impacts in that area. We're looking at simultaneously looking at our OWTS regulations, our septic system regulations. So where we're starting to work towards is that vaults and vault privies would become a conforming use for sanitary waste in the backcountry. These are areas that it is difficult to put in traditional OWTS systems. It's also potentially has a greater impact on the land. And so again, trying to keep that purpose and intent strong through all of this. You're gonna see that we're considering those conforming, which means today you have to go before the Board of Health to get a variance. In this particular case, we would update the regulations, so this is a conforming way to address sanitary waste. There'll still be reporting requirements and such, but you won't have to go through that extra layer of variance. And then for water, looking at water supplies as the ability to have alternative methods that are supported by public health, and that may be the kind of pack in and pack out idea for potable water. And still needing non-potable for extinguishing campfires, and we really need some discussion with our emergency management, our appointeds and electeds about, do we need additional water supplies for significant events given, kind of where we've been. So those are some changes that you're gonna see in the code, and this is a new use, but we have previously considered these under group camp. Move on here. So here's our first very exciting modeling, AI generated models. So what this is showing you and giving you kind of that spatial context and seeing how this presents on the property. So we've got more of a primitive access, more primitive structure types, and this is the maximum allowable density on a 20-acre property in our parcel in the backcountry. So this is what it's gonna typically look like. And so we think these models really kind of give a good identity and visual understanding. Certainly happy to take a little bit of a pause here if you have any questions.
So it's not necessarily to scale the houses, cause they would be ginormous houses at 600
Houses
square
are
feet.
600 square feet.
Right, but I mean the scale.
So this
Like
scale is
over 100 for
1
that
inch
house.
equals 100 feet. And these are, I think the data that was given in these is that they are, let me just see, we've got all the attributes on here. So these are 2 primitive campgrounds at 600 square feet each. So this is
Right, just the visual.
No, they're not,
Visual,
they're not.
right.
Okay.
There's nothing saying that the 2 units couldn't be adjacent to each other.
correct.
There's no space requirement or anything like that.
Right, the only thing that would keep certain elements like that are, like fire separation and things like that, as you can think of it.
Right,
We're not
right.
applying a building code here, but we still wanna think about fire separation between
And
units and things like
they're
that.
relatively minimal separation, so
Yeah,
in the 20 acres, it doesn't matter what shape those 20 acres take. It could be a long skinny strip, it could be any number of different things, but 20 acres aggregate.
that's right, they have to be adjacent to, so they all have to be within one parcel.
Right.
traditionally, these are gonna be those long skinny mining claims, those
Right.
10.33 acre mining claims, so they're really gonna be kind of those rectangle
Mhm.
properties on the east side.
So it would, the new acreage change would make it so that no longer could somebody just buy a 10 acre one and only put
One,
8 people in there
Right,
for any kind of hut use or commercial
for
use.
commercial. You'd still be able to do the backcountry structure, which is
But
not
just no
commercial,
rental, no
right,
but no group camp,
but no group, no semi-primitive.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but exactly, so this is how it would represent for commercial use.
Now, with,
And then my next, sorry, one more, is that if you, I'm assuming because this is just a summary, but 32 people is a lot of people, but I also understand that that's how, so are there other parameters we're gonna have in there and requirements for how many people? Like as far as, in that, is that just part of the hearing, or are they gonna be outlined, like if you're gonna have more, if your occupancy is gonna be as big as 32 people, you know, similar to the huts, you would need the staffing for that, you know? So like, I guess that, those are kind of my,
Yeah, those are great questions, and so those are things that we are, and I'm happy to share the actual proposed code, which
Okay.
which will have these, so after this meeting, and we will share that to you, that we've given to legal, and so we have gone through, similar to kind of what we had done in event facilities, is you have to look at the natural occurring hazards on site or the attributes about the parcel to determine that the 32 is our max allowable. It's not not an assumed, it's max allowable depending on whether or not the site has the ability to house that many people on it. So through the site plan review process, so one of the first criteria is site selection. So when we provide all of those standards, so yes, we apply, eventually the next stage that we're gonna bring to you are all of the standards that we're gonna apply to these. But there is a whole series of those to make sure, so tonight we're showing you maximum allowable, and then eventually we are gonna apply the standards that then will help define and inform if that's appropriate or not.
with the ability or the requirement of vault toilets and potentially having to have cisterns, is there a minimum road requirement to the structures for service of those things?
There will be, and that's gonna fall a little more into, for the vaults, there has to be the ability
To
for
pump,
a licensed person to be able to come in, so we're gonna be looking through the regulations
Okay.
for a contracted situation, that they've got someone that will come in and, service the vaults.
And that requires some type of at least a minimally maintained road. Same thing with a water truck to come in if they were required to have a cistern.
Correct.
Okay, good,
Correct.
thanks.
Exactly right. So our next new use is semi-developed campground. And so this is what the other type of use that we lump in under group camp. So this is, when we met specifically with our economic development partners, we found that this really is the model that we'd really like to incentivize, this business model, and that it needs to have some fluidness to it, be a little more nimble. So this is really the kind of a good economic driver. This is what we need to see as far as sustaining visitation and really be supportive of that. So this use is really designed, it's gonna be one of our most flexible uses that you're gonna see in our proposal. It's still conditional, everything you're gonna see tonight still requires conditional review, so we can really adjust it site specific. But we're going to remove this type of use from the backcountry. And it's got its own use specific only to backcountry, and we're gonna keep this in ag forestry, recreation, and resort. So that's where you'll find it today. We currently don't have any parcels zoned resort, but resort has a good intent behind it that potentially someday we might. And this would be a use that would support that type of zoning. So we wouldn't change the minimum lot size, it still needs a 5 acre minimum, but we would increase the density from 5 to 10 people per acre. So again, another reason that we really wanted to give you some kind of spatial context to these changes, to allow a greater density, again, if the site specific and the site plan review can sustain this. So this again is not an assumed maximum allowable. It's allowable if the site can support that. Sanitation would still allow for vaults and vault privies as conforming use without having to go through a variance process. However, they still have certain parameters like we just talked about. Oops, sorry, I'm the one driving this. About needing, a company that is registered to deal with the vaults and service them. So there was a time that we allowed owners to transport their waste to a dumping station, and the new regulations are going to see that we get away from that. We've had conversations with the state. We want to make sure that this high strength waste is properly at all times handled and disposed of. So we'll be in one way, we're going to get a little less regulatory in the OWTS regulations, but then we're gonna also make sure that we're being good stewards of that disposal method. Water, again, this can be a series of different things. Semi-developed campgrounds can have both some built structures, they can have camping sites, it can have, it's gonna be more nimble, so you're gonna be able to see things like domes and yurts and van camping and tent sites, but it may also have built structures. If they're built structures, they're gonna follow the building code. But they could be a variety of different places to house people. So really wanting to make sure that this has got a lot of different abilities to kind of meet whatever the market demand is. Non-potable water, of course, for campfires, and then again, may require additional like cisterns for support in more significant events. And everything's kind of the same. So we did 2 models of this. One that just shows like campsites for a semi-developed campground. So this is the 5 acres with 25 just campsites on it. It does have a toilet structure because you still will need, for like those vault privies, you'll still need to have one designated for each gender. Or I think the code also allows for a non-gender specific toilet structure. It typically, for 25, there's certain defined how many based on your flow rate. So engineers come in, they design, how many of these vault privies are needed to sustain the density on site. So it does show that toilet structure and then just these different sites. And then the other model that we have prepared for you is more of a glamping retreat. So this would be your semi-developed that has a series of different types of lodging opportunities within it. So everything from yurts and domes to just tent sites. And then it also has just kind of a gathering space with like a pavilion. These would all fall into that semi-developed use. So really trying to, again, kind of meet the market where it's at, listen to our economy experts and what the demand is and what we'd really like to incentivize and what really matches our identity as a community. So there's one other kind of cool thing that we believe that we're adding in here, and that is the accessory use. So allowing for the ability for these semi-developed campgrounds to have things that we're defining as small scale low impact events, things like yoga retreats or corporate gatherings, some type of bicycle group or a training camp. Things that don't necessarily, associate with amplified noise. They can easily abide by those quiet hours. Bless you. And that they don't exceed 100 people per day, and that they don't go for a length of time more than 3 continuous days. They could do these up to 4 times per calendar year as an allowable accessory use. And, but they will have standards. They are gonna have to address adequate parking. They will have to be able to demonstrate adequate water and sanitary waste. But in these cases, this could be a temporary solution. That means that whatever their solution is with their pit privies, they could add porta potties for this use. They don't necessarily have to invest immediately in the infrastructure to sustain this type of extended use beyond 4 times a year. So what we're hearing is that small businesses need the ability to be a little more nimble, to be more sustainable and test their market. So they need the opportunity to have these test periods to ensure whether or not they want to invest those big capital dollars into infrastructure, or can they meet their needs 4 times a year under this accessory use. If they want to expand that and go beyond 4 times a year, then there's the temporary use permit is still available, or you could come under and get a CUP and become an event venue, an event facility. So there are other opportunities. This is just an automatic way, again, to support that small business development. What we've really heard is essential in our community and really fits what we're trying to kind of reach to incentivize local business with. So that's,
You have
there was
this-
An image.
there is an image. Let's take a picture, or take a look at the picture, buddy. Something else I was gonna mention, but I can't remember what it was right now. So let's see what that looks like if we add, so here we have kind of that area that we've got the camping going on. I would say that, and it's supporting an event with a built structure and, some outdoor qualities, so it's a little bit of a mix. It does have to be able to present adequate parking. It may not all look like this image, so, lean in with us, these aren't 100%, they're just conceptual, so it may not represent itself like paved parking. It's more about, do we have enough adequate spaces to provide parking on this site? So this, to me, is a little more developed, is what you'll see in some of our other examples moving forward, but we just wanted to kind of show you how a semi-developed campground could also have some space for this accessory event. And sometimes I think going back and even looking at some of these other models, so is there an area that you could put, a gathering space over here? Is there adequate parking if you get people off of the right of way and have a good evacuation plan and things like this? So some of these could potentially accommodate this accessory use as part of the review. And some of them may want to go, as far as having it a little more well-defined. But we want to give the nimbleness to be able to kind of embrace all of this and support that, yes.
So,
Go ahead.
4 events, 3 days maximum. If they wanna do a 7-day event, does it go straight to a CUP and it's a different deal?
It's a special event.
You could just use the temporary use permit through a special event permit. Now, those numbers are not set in stone, so I think I need to point out, 4, we've heard everything from 3 to 6.
Well, and even a 3-day event would require 6 or 7 days with setup and breakdown before and after the fact. So a 3-day event is It'd be almost impossible to
days
put
of-
something like that together,
3 days of 100 people on site
Right.
is the
Right,
idea,
right.
right? So,
So exactly, so 3 days is kind of when you would have the people actually gathered for the event, but that's a really good point. Maybe we need to further refine that up, that we consider that there will be time of setup and breakdown.
Right.
We can extend that to 7 days, we can, so those are movable numbers that we wanna hear back from you to say, hey, does that work? Is 4 the right number? Is 3 the right number? Is 100 people on site overwhelming? Does that feel, as an accessory use too much density? Part of this will get reviewed through the site plan and the CUP, because you're going to put all of those use-specific standards to the test with each one of these. So it's gonna get, this will never be a broad entitlement. Everything will be site-specific once you apply standards.
So the 100 people for the special accessory event, is that inclusive of all the other glamping sites that might have, so
100 people total on site.
total regardless, so it's like if you got some people that are still camping, you could only limit it to 80 people if there's 20 other campers.
And so we'd like your feedback on that. So it's being, we're looking at this, actually the way that this represents right now is kind of having in addition to. So when we tried to kind of model this spatially, we thought about, okay, what if we had both of this occurring on the same site at the same time? Is that too much? Is that too, we're going way too more than the site can sustain? And should it just be 100 people total? So that's gonna be one of those decision points that we'd really like you to weigh in on as well. And-
Yeah, I think like one of the things that I feel like you end up really straddling the line with is, at one point, is really at the end of the day, it better for them to come forward and become an event venue, or, come and have a more specific event permit. Because I'm trying to think of like, I think this is awesome, and I think this will open a lot of doors for people, but I also think it's gonna open a lot of doors for people. And so I think like you're gonna end up having a lot of people come in and they won't know every event they're doing, to know if the site can sustain what we think it's gonna, like your version of what they could do versus your version versus what their version is, could be like totally different things. And so I just feel like, because you're not analyzing the specific event of 100 people,
Right.
you're giving them a blanket to have an event with 100 people. I just think we have to think about that, like, so that's the only thing I would say is like, I think, I really like it, I just wanna think about the repercussions a little bit, like, I don't necessarily think, I don't know of any necessarily right this minute, but it does worry me a little bit that you end up with.
Well, yeah, and I could see like, just to add to that, is like if there was a pack burro training camp and you had 50 people with, let's say 25 trailers with a couple burros apiece, the next thing you know, you have this like really giant event happening.
And that's exactly what I was thinking, whether it's a small music festival or some really hyped training event of some type, you'd have all of those campgrounds filled up with people who were intending to be a part of the event, but then you have 100 other people show up for the event, so you end up with an event with 200 people that you really didn't see in advance. That's the only thing that I would wonder
The
about.
100, in my opinion, should include the campers, because that's the whole idea behind the site. The site is like, we're creating this space for campers and there's gonna be an event. So to me, it's all this like, I'm
Yeah.
assuming I'm having this event for the people that are staying at my place. And so I
Yeah.
think that, in my opinion, the 100, whatever the number is, should be inclusive of guests. Like, it doesn't have to include your employees or anything like that, but I think
It has to include everyone on the
the
parcel at
guests
the
should
time.
be 100 people max. And
Because it would be so easy to work that backwards and end up with twice as much density as what you're planning for.
Yeah.
And I would say that I would just keep separate staff, so if you need to have 10 staff people helping out, I just can't see limiting that part of it, because I would rather see some extra staff helping to manage everything.
No, that's what I'm saying, I think the
Okay,
100
yeah.
doesn't include staff,
Okay,
so that we have
okay, yeah.
nothing to do with that.
Okay,
It's just that, like, so it doesn't have to include your staff, but it should include everybody you have as guests on the property.
okay, yeah,
Whether or not they are involved in the event, right, right.
That's great feedback, that's really good, that's really good to hear.
Just thinking of all the people that would wanna come a couple of days early and go camping, but still wanna be part of the event. And
Well,
the other people
usually
that show
that's
up maybe
the
for
reason
just
you
one
have
day.
an event is to.
Right, well, usually, but
Yeah.
at the same time, right,
Mhm.
it's
Right.
Well, somebody could have a wedding there and these people aren't there for the wedding, but.
and so looking at the business side of it, is that if something had to be delayed, so a wedding had to be delayed for whatever reason, maybe fire, I don't. Is that business owner, if they push something to the next month and now they're double booked, are they just kind of out of? I mean, I would hate for that to be detrimental to their bottom line if they had to bump something too because of things outside of their
Well, I mean, if
control.
they're booked, they're booked, like, I don't know how they would.
Yeah,
Right,
Just
but would they
staying
lose
because
out
they-
money if they
Yeah.
were, I don't know how that would work,
Yeah, but that's
I
like
mean-
freight, like if your wedding gets canceled and you pick a wedding, a night where there's another wedding, you can't do it, they have to say no.
Yeah, can I offer something?
Yes.
I feel like what we're talking about is the capacity of the site, and we don't need to like make it too conceptual. We're just talking capacity. It's like the same as a building. You've got a capacity of 300. That's 300 guests. You don't have to count your staff. You can't have more than 300, even if you had to double book it.
Right,
You know,
Right.
like it's just not different. A site is not different from a building, and that might help a little bit.
Very good, very good. Great feedback. Great feedback. Awesome. Anybody else before we move on that wants to talk about, I don't know what's that going, am I done yet? I don't know. Oh, I'm done, okay. Thank you for that feedback. So what we've kind of heard is that we should keep this during those times of events to 100 people total, but it still has the ability to operate as a semi-developed campground, but it can pivot to support events and just, you know, we can be supportive and meet that need that we're hearing to really support small business. So that's great. I'm gonna go ahead, Melissa's gonna talk to you a little bit about the other uses, so we're gonna trade off here.
So the next category, where the next couple of, well, this category in particular, we don't see a lot of change. But this is our developed and modern campground. We are simplifying kind of what that means in our minds anyway. We've kept this a conditional approval. We removed backcountry from this category. The minimum lot size remains at 2 acres and the density remains at 25 sites per acre. So, you know, we haven't had these applications. This is a portion of our code that's very prescriptive. If you do this, it's pretty much laid out how you do it. And so.
And we don't have those in the business, regular commercial district?
They've not been in the business
No.
historically.
Yeah, so we do have our conforming OWTS or a public system, because they could be within those boundaries, and again, our permanent water supply. So, you know, there's not much creativity needed in terms of that. This is a lovely image, but it does demonstrate what 50 units look like. So 2 acre parcel at the densities that we're talking about. And most RV parks, as we've probably all been in, are pretty linear and pretty geometric because that makes it very efficient. So this demonstrates what that could look like, including the bathroom shower facility and a dump station.
They actually are conditional in the business.
Are they?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because I was like, there's that section of business along 91, and I feel like it should be conditional, and if it's not,
Okay,
in the commercial or business, whatever
Yeah,
we call it, business.
yeah, we'll
It is.
capture that.
I would add to the AI generated image that an RV park typically has slips that are angled, cause nobody wants
Oh my
to try
gosh.
and pull in things.
You aren't allowed to look at the AI images anymore.
I'm just saying, I mean.
Yeah, this is where my mind goes to too, so I'm right there with you,
I'm like,
Jason,
who's
but
gonna pull into all those?
these guys have to talk me off the ledge today too, so it's okay, I understand.
See how wrong AI can be?
That's right, so it's just to kind of.
Those are pull-throughs.
Kind of, but these all, sorry, just I think you mentioned this, but modern campgrounds, the difference between the two is these all are, need to support independent units, so they have water, sanitation, and electricity hookups, I'm sure you assumed that, but that's the big difference, and so this represents, that kind of.
But they can be a mix of that, right?
But yes, but modern would have those type of hookups, whereas developed is your boondocking in a developed campground. They don't
I just
have
know
those.
that a lot of develops also have tent sites.
And so that would, as long as they have RV hookups, then our code would consider them modern.
Okay, that's what I meant, yeah, they're just, yeah, okay,
They don't all have to be, but.
right.
Yeah, so here's the developed campgrounds. So these are dependent units, so just van spaces, again, our yurts and domes, as well as the tent sites. This kind of lays it out pretty clearly in that way. We do have a.
The modern and developed are the same zones. That was on the same, that for, not, two
Yeah.
slides back, right?
Yeah, that's right, we kind of are saying developed / modern.
Got it, okay,
got
okay, yeah,
And
now,
maybe we need to lay
yep.
that out a little differently,
No,
but
no.
right now that's how it's. But they do slightly different things, because these are dependent. They don't bring their own, you're gonna use these facilities for bathrooms and water, et cetera. So. Yeah, this is the kind of density that we're talking about, but again, the difference in probably our semi-developed and developed is pretty obvious. The level of utilities are significantly different.
Can you say again what the people count was for the, I don't remember.
This one is a 2-acre parcel, there's 50 campsites, and let's see, what is it?
Yeah, I don't think it says it on here, but I know 2 slides
Yeah.
back, I think it
It
shows.
did show us.
You get 25 campsites per acre, and it doesn't define the how many.
So there's no people count.
There's not a
The
people.
people count on the other one was for the events they could automatically do. It wasn't for the actual campground
Is there a
section.
people count for this new category?
No, it follows, and this follows our camping, state camping regulations of 25 sites per acre.
So the other one wasn't attaching people to the campground type. It was attaching
you
the
could have
number of people
25
to,
people per tent,
That's what it says.
I guess is what I'm, like, there's no limit? I guess that's what I'm failing to
Well,
understand.
some things like in a developed and modern campground, you're gonna have to size all of your facilities like that. So generally, you don't see 25 people per campsite.
Right.
In pretty much any model I've ever seen. You're gonna, because partially because that's probably not very marketable. But the other is, so all your infrastructure is gonna have to be designed around your occupancy and your flow rates. So eventually, absolutely, we're going to know how your infrastructure is sized to support how many humans you have on site. So, campsites will have to, when you start putting in your infrastructure, particularly your water and your sanitation, you're gonna start having to determine how many humans you're gonna have on site at any one time. And that'll be really your defining moment of how many people you're gonna have on site. So 25 campsites, generally you're seeing somewhere between 2 to 6 people per site. And that's just a industry standard.
And that's gonna rough up to something like 100 people as a typical maximum.
But for the purposes of somebody saying, I wanna have, there's no limit as long as your
There's no limit, but
your sanitary system supports it.
But they have to base it on something, and that's where the 25 sites kind of limit you to somewhere around 100 people.
Right, I'm just thinking like, so if you have 2 acres and you have 25 sites per acre, 50 sites, you have 50 RVs, and an RV can sleep 10 people, that's 500 people, as long as your sanitation system supports 1 and 2 for 500 people. Is the only, I'm just,
You're gonna put in, you're gonna have to put in collection lines and you're gonna have to, so, they will typically, the modern and developed campgrounds will typically put limitations or have infrastructure that can support that, and those are
so
decisions.
we're not limiting it in the code here, but it's limited in, so I guess, I just don't understand why it's spelled out in one place but not in another place.
The other place was simply an event.
Okay,
If a campground, if somebody wanted to put together a campground and they wanted that automatic use of an event without having to get a special event permit for an auxiliary event, that event has a max of 100. It had nothing to do with the campground. As the campground operates, there was no people limit, it was just campsite limit.
okay. I just think it's a little bit strange that you wouldn't have
So
some kind of
there are
limitation.
places in the code
That's
that
all.
we are gonna limit how many people per acre, you are gonna see that. They're gonna be more in our areas that we have vulnerabilities or sensitivities to the lands in the areas and compatibility with adjacent uses. In our areas that we've got so we're less worried about how many people are per acre in places that we've got traditional infrastructure and brick and mortar buildings and things like that that support it. So we're more sensitive about how many people that we have on the land in different areas that have generally more environmental sensitivities, because we think about the impact of the degree of use on the land.
Okay.
So in an area where it is more defined with centralized infrastructure and paved roads and good turning radiuses and sight distances, and in certain zone districts that we don't have as many environmental sensitivities, we're less concerned about how many, actual people are on the ground
I guess-
contributing to the.
Where that then leads, my next question is there anything that prevents that from becoming permanent residence?
Oh, so if someone, so like the tiny
With the
home-
50 RVs, so then the slide before it, that's what could that potentially become, hey, we're just gonna all hang out there forever? Is that, or is that what we're trying, are we not preventing that, or is that something that needs to be
That's a great question.
discussed? I don't know.
think that's a.
Cause there are some, like the Salida RV Resort, you can buy a tiny home and live there full
Yeah, and
time.
it's probably 50-50 at this point.
And half of them do and half of them don't, so we would wanna talk about that as part of the conditional use permit, but again, these are conditional use permits, so they're not automatic approvals. So
Right.
somebody would have to bring in their presentation and you're gonna ask, are you allowing
If that question is
500 people? Are you going to do, well, that's all part of the conditional use
Right,
permit, right? And
right.
so it's like, are you gonna allow some sites to be used for
Permanent.
more than, for long-term bases?
That's right.
Then we're considering that based on that, and if their infrastructure meets that and supports that. But similarly to like a house with a septic system, they're gonna size it based on number of bedrooms. It doesn't mean you can't put 20 people in your one bedroom and still have 50 people in your house. But your septic system requirements aren't going to be based on people, they're gonna be based on your bedrooms and bathroom counts.
Right.
So that's the way that we're gonna have to model the code. initially for them to then put forward the permit,
Right, okay.
the application for what they wanna do, and then us, but like this at least gives them a parameter of like, you know, generally, these are the parameters, now you bring us what you're trying to do, and we'll decide if your site works for what you're trying to do.
Okay,
So you can
Jason-
further restrict during that conditional use permit based on their site and their application of these items.
And we're creating an opportunity in the code where a property owner that wants to entertain that has the ability to bring that forward for you to consider.
And then you can, yeah,
Yeah, if
Permanent,
someone
like,
has,
residence.
if someone has an opportunity that they wanna do long-term rentals in here with tiny homes, we're providing an opportunity for them to bring that proposal to you for consideration. What does that mean? What does that impact, you know, if you've got
Does the
longer term
infrastructure
rentals
work?
instead of temporary occupancies in there. So we're creating a place where you can have those conversations and look at this on a case-by-case basis.
Inside,
So-
inside of the framework, so
Right,
make it easier to do. Jason, those would be good questions to ask in CUP hearings.
yeah.
Long-term rentals,
okay,
daily rate, monthly rate, that kind of thing. Those
Yeah.
are all good questions.
And we're not putting any regulation in the code right now that would preclude that. There are,
Right,
you're
okay.
gonna see,
that's what I just wanted to make.
yeah, you're gonna see some RV codes, in some of our peer reviews that wouldn't let there be rentals for longer than, or less than, or more than 30 days. And so there are some codes out there that will, you know, really wanna keep these more of a transient lodging kind of idea than any type of long-term, but with our housing crisis and different things, you're starting to see that model evolve to be some supportive housing options. So our code will allow the option to come in and a business owner could have that conversation and see if that's something. But we're not gonna preclude them from doing it as we've got it right now.
Do you guys have other thoughts about whether that should or shouldn't happen? Should
I
they?
think it should be open for them to bring forward, because I think there are, you know, like I said, this Salida RV resort is a great situation down there for affordable, longer term stays. You know, and I'm assuming, at least I know they're still somewhat new, but it's still pretty well kept down there and everything, like, assuming that they have lots of parameters on that application, right? And so I'm sure that when you're talking through some of those longer term use options, you've got stricter guidelines on, you know, refuse and, you know, noise and blah, blah,
Common area
blah, right?
maintenance,
Yeah,
all
right.
of that.
So you have all those extra things that you're gonna apply to that specific application versus, nope, we're gonna have max 7-day stays at our park or whatever, then you're like, okay, well, we don't have to think as far into some of those other pieces, so.
So,
Yeah, there are one or two new RV parks down in BV or just this side of BV, and they've come in with it is full residential infrastructure. It is incredible to see how much work they put into
Right,
sanitation.
and I guess what I'm saying is, are you gonna see that along 24, like there's just 20 different developments of all
24
RVs?
is a side corridor for us, so no, we won't. That's gonna be part of the CUP process. And no, that's really not an option. But things like the tiny home RV park in Salida has actually driven a tremendous amount of, that entire area at this point has been developed. The vast majority of it is going long-term, is permanent structures.
Okay.
So that didn't spawn a bunch of other short-term
Okay,
campgrounds, it actually spawned a bunch of permanent development. So that wasn't it wasn't a bad thing, what they
Right.
did, and they've done a really, really good job with maintenance. The place is usually spotless. That's another thing that'll be something for us to try to uphold.
okay.
We really heard that in, you know, kind of the early conversations. Commissioner Lee's not with us tonight, but, you know, this was a question and a model that he wanted us to look at and think about. So we're ensuring that there's nothing in the code, in any of these developed or modern campgrounds that would restrict that from being a possibility for, appointed electeds to consider. So we're leaving that pathway open.
Okay.
for you all to look at, because we do think it could also maybe be a supportive housing strategy too, just like it's been used in most
Absolutely.
communities, so, that is an open possibility.
Alright, very good. So moving to our rural lodging, kind of simplifying the name, keeping this a conditional approval, removing it from backcountry, there's a theme, and really redefining it as built structures or a group of built structures, so they would really be building code compliant. That wasn't so clear before. The minimum lot size is 20 acres, that's not a change, and the density of 20 people per acre remains the same. And so the same level of infrastructure is required, these are really permanent, intended to be permanent facilities. So here is a pretty fun image of a lodge that could hold 400 people with a restaurant and stables and a parking area to kind of accommodate. We haven't completely verified the parking count, but the idea this is conceptual, so this again is sort of maximum density for this type of use.
Is the automatic event attached to all of these or just that one?
Just semi.
Okay.
Semi-developed is the one that has the accessory event. Going forward, there's an image here we have of if there were an event facility with a lodge. But I wanted to pause here. Any
So,
questions or comments?
My only, it's like, if you have 400 people staying there, but only half of them get to eat, I mean, could you have 2 buildings so you could have 400 people eat? Since all 400 people are.
Good.
I guess I don't understand 400 and 200 so far as lodging versus dining capacity, it says in
Yeah.
this site summary.
And not everybody that stays there may wanna eat there, but, yes,
I mean-
you could put it in another restaurant.
AI had some.
Oh, okay, I was,
I didn't feed her that information.
okay. It just said dining.
Let's just assume they're not all gonna eat at one time.
Okay, yeah, like they're in stages or something,
Some of them are gonna have a picnic and all.
like the middle school versus the high school, right? They eat at different lunch hours or something.
So what's the thought behind the event option only attaching to the one?
Well, I think at this scale, we can go to our, this is a look at it as a cabin, and we can go back here. But an event facility as a full-on, kind of permanent structure.
So it has water, it has
It does.
egress, it has all of the safety things that you would need to
Yeah,
be able to do this on a full-time basis,
that's
where
right,
the other doesn't necessarily have that.
yeah.
Cause the other one you could allow for porta johns and things of that nature
No,
for the
they don't
100.
necessarily have water on site.
I guess I just am thinking, yeah, go ahead.
So the rural lodging, I think we wrote the definition as, some of the common uses. It could be restaurants, could be a whole array of different things. And I think that events, obviously they're gonna have weddings, obviously, this kind of thing. So I think it's written in that it doesn't need to have this kind of accessory event to it. It could encompass all of those things because it's gonna be sited properly with infrastructure. It's already gonna have the parking available. It's going to have all of these kind of, because it's brick and mortar, it's our most developed, it's our moderate.
Got it, so it's not removing it, it's just assuming that
It's
it's
just kind of assuming that it could do all of
encompassing all of it anyway. Okay,
The closest thing that Lake County has to this potentially right now would be like Angel Views Lodge, that is pre-planned.
Yeah.
I know that's in a residential development, but that's what this is kind of intended for, is some type of a high-end event space.
kind of a
Permanent
destination
high-end
resort,
space.
right? It's a destination resort, they're gonna have, you could do weddings, there's recreation associated with it, I think that's what I wrote. Recreation could be associated with it, education could be associated with it. Weddings, events could
Got it.
be, that's just, when you own one of these rural lodging, moderate density places, it could be kind of all things.
But Heather, what I hear you wondering about is should we have an accessory event use for a rural lodge? Is that what you?
No, I think, I was just trying to think through the times, like, you created that potential for an event, like for the, I forget what it's called, but
Semi-developed.
the semi-developed campground. If they wanted to just have that 3-day, 100 people without needing to get a temporary use permit. And what I hear Ian saying is that these applications could likely just work in the events that they're allowed to have and not need that extra addition because it's already gonna meet all of those.
Yeah, they really have an unlimited capacity. In terms of the number that they would, they just need to design it for the number of people that they would wanna host.
But what we put in the code, because, like we were talking about how we were thinking about how many actual occupants. So this is one where you're gonna see that we've maxed it out, so the max is 400 per 20 acres. Because we assume those kind of things are happening in addition to lodging. So this is one place where we have thought about how many,
Okay.
people are on there because of all of the different things that we think could be occurring as part of a rural lodging center.
We got 10 acres with 20 people per acre, so over 200.
And so, yeah, the model here just shows what would the event center look like if it was, we just paired them up together. But it could also, obviously, it says there's stand its own alone parcel. And it's kind of cool because it's anticipated everything from an amphitheater to kind of outdoor to indoor and the parking that would be needed. So this is when you invest in, okay, we're becoming an event facility, we're gonna put in the infrastructure and this is what our primary use is gonna be. Whereas with the semi-developed campground, we just wanted to have that nimbleness of them to be able to flex and accommodate things other than just lodging, because there's a market for that from what we're hearing. So we're just trying to kind of think, how can we create opportunities that align with what we're hearing is needed.
No, that covers a lot of ground, it's aspirational, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not seeing, well, we've all heard through the years, different ideas about this rural lodging retreat. It's gonna happen any day now for the last 2 decades. But this is what it, would look like, we think. And so we wanna create that space for it.
I think there was supposed to be water slides, I think, right? Water
Yeah, that's right. We didn't put the indoor water, it's housed under one of those roof lines over there.
One of these days.
Yeah, so we did jump over the option of
Yeah, there we
cabins.
go.
Yeah, so this was sort of example number 2. This isn't perfect math, but the idea is a smaller lodge with cabin. Again, permanent, structures would be
It's like
part of
Mount
it.
Princeton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have just a question is this kind of how like Grand West originally kind of looked before?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what I
Yeah.
used that today as an example, a lot of those are duplexes, so I'm like, oh, these could even be duplexes. But yeah,
Okay.
that's what I thought of too,
Okay.
so.
yeah. Thoughts or questions? Yeah, so our event facility, Elsa's the one who said, why not just take off the word special? Simplified a lot of things, Elsa. But anyway, we kept this as a conditional approval, removed it from backcountry. The minimum lot size has stayed the same and the density has stayed the same, like I said. And as we talked about it, these are really kind of permanent water and sewer solutions. So here, we've been sort of rambling around this, but here's a chart that really kind of helps understand the accessory event, the temporary use event, and then an event facility. So right now, and I suspect we'll have more conversations with community members, how many times a year should an accessory event take place? Or how many should a temporary should somebody be able to get a temporary use for events before it goes to kind of that permanent facility? And these are the numbers we're starting with right now.
Can those two be combined?
Could you have 4 times under an accessory and pull 4 temporary event permits? Potentially, the way that it's written right now, you get the automatic accessory. And then you could come, so we updated our temporary use code language to put into code all the submittal requirements and amendment process. So the wildfire is a perfect example of, and so is COVID, but there are times that we have to amend these. So we added that in there. But right now, what our intent is that you don't circumvent the conditional use permit process. And that if you, at what point do you need to commit to being an event venue? So how many times can the same site operate? So under this, our limit for accessory use is 4. We haven't put anything that said if you've used all your accessory uses, you can't have the same as everybody else and still get 4 temporary use permits for the same site. So there is a possibility right now, as the draft is written, you could use your 4 accessory, you could come in and apply for 4 temporary.
At the limited
At
attendance number.
Yeah, and
That would be a
so,
nice driver for development,
so you would
so
have,
somebody doesn't take advantage of this, of the situation and never ever actually put any money into infrastructure.
Yeah.
If they hit that wall, that's a good incentive to make a larger investment.
so what this does, it gives that accessory 4 times, and then 4 times you come in under the temporary use permit. Temporary use permits are a couple $100, I can't tell you what it is. But it goes through the review process, and we're
you
looking
get 8
closer at
events.
those impacts.
4 under 100 and your other 4.
You'd be an
Yeah,
8.
do we want that? Do you want that?
Yeah, what do you think?
I mean, I'm not necessarily, I think it's more just something we should be thinking about, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I agree. So then my question is this. Because we're talking about an event facility in a lot of ways being accessory to some of these things we're talking about, but camping wise or lodging wise, but you also could have event facilities be auxiliary to other uses in our code, and they're kind of an auxiliary use, but you'd be getting a conditional use permit for it, even if your primary use doesn't need a conditional, you know what I mean? So like, how does that work?
So you'd still, so
If your
temporary
primary
events,
use doesn't need it,
right,
you would just get a CUP for the event venue? Is that how somebody would do that?
So one site can operate hosting events up to 4 times annually, same premise, same
Yeah,
site.
right.
But yeah, you'd have to transition at some point beyond that. If you're doing it more often than 4, then you have to go to the event. I don't think I'm answering your question exactly.
So, I have what was it called? Semi-primitive?
Semi
I have
semi-developed.
this land and I've got 20 yurts on it and I am gonna do, no, I'm the cookhouse and I have yurts. But there are weddings and there are more than 4 or 8 of them a year. But the primary use is this restaurant, which I'm approved for, and then this lodging piece. So do you get separate conditional use permit, like do you get a conditional use permit for the venue to become a wedding venue because you're doing more than 8 a year?
At that point, the way that we're suggesting it
Yeah.
is if you're gonna do more than 8 a year, because we can get you there between the 2 of them, then yes, then you
And-
would need to come in and get a CUP for an event facility.
Okay,
That would-
so, yeah, my question was like, and I guess it's just because I've never dealt with this, where a portion of the business needs a CUP, but not the main business, do you know what I mean? So I think that's where I'm like, so what if both things, can you work like a PUD that way, where you have multiple things and they all fall under one CUP?
A lot of, and so that's the way our code was written before, that if you hit 500 people at any of these, that you would go to a PUD. PUD is the most nimble, right? You get to create your own zoning, you get to create what your uses are, what's allowable, you can do mixed use, you can do whatever. So PUD is always an option to avoid systematic CUPs, you know, like, does it make more sense? Do you get to come in and maybe you've got a different idea about parking, maybe you've got a different idea
For some reason, I
about,
thought like
you know,
PUD was only
setbacks.
like
Subdivision,
subdivision development, but, okay,
so you
Okay.
can do PUD without subdividing your land. That's just
Right.
coming in and creating your own planned unit development where it's a hybrid zoning. You get to do your own designer zoning, you just have to prove that it's an improvement to the from the underlining zone district. But that is available, without subdivision.
got it, okay, sorry.
No, those are,
That
those are
part.
good questions, cause I think, you know, we really have wrestled and continue to wrestle with how many times a year is this allowed before you really invest in permanent infrastructure. And I think there's a real concern about, you know, rolling in porta potties, you know, how many times a year is that a good idea? And then it's like, okay, you need to put in a vault system or
Yeah, it's
something
time to
that-
check the box,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
And I think, you know, we've wrestled with 4 to 6. You know, I hadn't thought until you brought it up that you could add these two together.
So
And I think that was the intent,
they have to come before us for the use permit.
yeah.
Not the temporary one, right?
That's
No.
administrative.
It's
The
administrative.
temporary use is,
Nor the accessory in this case.
the temporary use permit is, administrative up to 500 people, and then it's a board's decision, 500 or greater for that. The accessory event, so what we're gonna look at is, you know, they need to, provide, I think that they still will need to provide some type of event. They're still gonna have to do an administrative review with us, because they're gonna have to show us that they have, you know, all of these things, because the code asks them to make sure that they have the sanitation, they have the water, they have those, so there'll still be, it's an allowable use, but they're gonna need to file their event
That's-
information with us.
That's good though, because if they came to us 4 times for an accessory event, we would have the background information, well, they've done 12 of this other.
Right.
So then it becomes a different conversation as far as future investment and infrastructure development goes. So there is still a way to control that, if you kept 4 and 4.
Right, and you know, we're really trying to find that balance of
Right.
like, how do we support small business, but also have favorable environmental outcomes, right? So we wanna think about trying to balance that.
And so the accessory event is right now written, the proposed way is 3 days. What was the temporary event? Was there a limitation on days?
Temporary-
I don't remember seeing that.
I don't think the code gives, I'd have to look it up. I'm not sure if we give any time frame on that. Temporary events don't typically last, all the ones that we permit in Lake County, they're usually 3 days.
Okay, I didn't know if there was,
They usually
like,
are.
on the accessory, it said, I think it was 3 day, right?
But they're kind of like, I'm applying, it's similar to a conditional use, like, I wanna do this special event, can I
For
get
so many
approval?
days.
And then they put in their days, they put in their people, and then they have the option of being like, if doesn't work.
Right, I just didn't know if it was written like the accessory where it said 3 days.
I'm not sure it is, because I think it's like, if anything over 25 people. So it could be 3 days with only 50 people,
Right.
easy, but if it's a 3-day concert with 499 people,
Right.
then they're gonna have different requirements for
So
that.
administratively, if they came in with 50 people and they said it's only 3 days and they were asking for a temporary event, you could say, well, you could just use an accessory
Yeah.
event.
As long as it's
Yeah,
low
okay.
impact, so we wanna look at the impact, are
Right,
you gonna have
okay.
amplified music? Is it,
Got
you
it,
know, is it, so can it be defined, so can it be defined as low impact? Is the duration at a certain threshold, is the amount of people, you know, meet those thresholds, those would be really 3 of the, so it's gotta fit into those categories to be
Okay.
accessory. And there's still an opportunity, if one of those is no, then you can go through the temporary, and this does, and we actually, when we were kind of, I think Adam's on this call too, when we heard everything from like 6 to 12. Like you should be able to do a special event once a month, every month, to kind of subsidize your doing your business and being able to do those things. So this kind of lands in the middle of that, like 6 to 8
Yeah, I think
or 6 to 12.
it's fine until if it's not, then we look at it again.
Okay,
Let's
All
not
right.
our last cut at this.
so, yeah, this is where we wanted to kind of, I don't know if I can move that little talking thing, can I move it down? Yeah. Oops. Okay, moving it over here. So this is the table and some like of the kind of significant changes that we really want your feedback on. So the first in the semi-primitive, this is we used to run as a group camp. It's only a use that it's only applicable in backcountry. So we used to, back group camp said you have to have a minimum of 5 acres. We are intentionally raising this to 20 acres. Has huge significance because most parcels in the backcountry are 10.33 acre mining claims. So this immediately says that, and we've got roughly 450 parcels in the backcountry. So this immediately diminishes the degree of impact by saying, well, you're gonna have to own 2 adjacent parcels in order to even entertain the ability to do a commercial use in the background.
It is stipulated that they're adjacent parcels.
They'd have to be in order to,
Contiguous.
they're gonna have to be contiguous, in order to be able to put the use, on the parcels. So they would have to, come in and consolidate that into a singular parcel in order to realize the use on it. So this is a significant way to minimize the degree of impact in the backcountry. It is intended to align with the purpose and intent of the backcountry, which specifically says it's not designed to support commercial use. But this would be a significant change, also something we'll be working with Matt on to make sure that it's legally defensible, to look at it in this manner. But this is one of those places that we wanna just let this sit for you for a little bit, see what you think. If you have any immediate feedback on it, we'd love to hear it. But this is a significant change. So
It's a wonderful
thoughts,
change.
ideas like that?
Very smart.
Okay,
I think it's awesome.
okay.
Yeah, you guys have done a great job.
Okay, great. I talked Melissa out of making it 40 acres. Or 35, I think.
On the backcountry one?
It was
100.
Dividing by 400.
it was impressive.
In the permitted zoning column, there's no new areas that it's only being removed in the backcountry in those 4 bottom categories.
Yeah, developed
Yes.
modern, we're changing
Yes.
that, right, to allow it in business.
Yes,
So no longer an option in the backcountry, which is also an excellent change.
right.
Right, but there's no other new on that list.
No,
Those are all the
no.
existing, okay.
Yeah, we're just removing it, we're taking
The
all of these
backcountry.
uses out of backcountry.
Got it,
They were
okay.
there, we're gonna take them out, that was the first iteration. We did an amazing job after 20 years of hard work on backcountry, so it's just time to refine it. And then the density of 32 people max between 2 structures. Thoughts, ideas about that? Obviously, this is our most restrictive occupancy, but again, firmly, based in the purpose and intent of the zoning.
The hut model has been tried and tested here for generations now. I think that's a great model to continue, is there are very stringent rules and requirements and the way things are built, and the way things are controlled, that'll be easy to replicate. I think that makes good sense.
Elsa, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm not firing on all cylinders, so maybe this is a silly question, but when it comes to the 2 structures, I'm thinking like backcountry, you've got imagine you've got your hut, and then you've got like a little porch out to your vault toilet. Then could you also have like a utility shed, or do these have to be like occupied structures? Would that,
No,
what I just said, would that be 3 structures?
great question. So what we're talking about is habitable structures.
Okay.
Backcountry zoning allows you, 2 accessory structures, I believe, that can't exceed a certain square footage. So, they're still allowable accessory structures, and you would obviously, a use like this would need some supportive structures most likely. You know, even if it's like a privy or something. So there are allowable accessory structures. This is just the habitable ones, the ones that are
Okay.
gonna house people, yeah.
So like a sauna.
Yeah, it's not. Okay, great, well, that was, any thoughts about conforming, vaults and vault privies becoming a conforming use? Any thoughts about that?
We're just gonna wanna have some, not restrictions, but some requirements for access.
Yes,
Some ongoing maintenance requirements for access.
yes,
Same thing if cisterns are required for certain ones.
that's right, 'cause
We do
they
have a
to
few
those.
providers, the roads that I've seen them go up to, empty
They're crazy.
vaults are fine,
Yeah.
so.
And that'll be part of the site plan review, you know, something we're not getting into. I'm gonna just kind of go through those categories before we end, just so you kind of have an idea of what we say site specific, what kind of things we're gonna look at. I'll just share those with you because they're kind of universal through all of the uses. But we'll dive into those a little bit next time. Semi-developed campgrounds, so, you know, really the biggest change here is increasing that density if the site can support it. So again, this is very much based on that site selection piece. Every single one of these have to go through that site planning process that the planning commission approves before the CUP is approvable. So can't approve the CUP, you know, we usually do them concurrently and condition them similarly so that we're doing them at the same time, but we're looking at all those attributes. So this does give the ability to look at that, and that's why we wanted the kind of that spatial modeling piece to kind of look like, is this just like a crazy amount of people? But we think that it looks like it is manageable in the right instances based on those site reviews. Not a lot of changes to developed in modern, other than, you know, great conversation, because we're definitely creating that space to think about these as supportive housing options too. Like, you know, if a project came in and wanted to have some longer term occupancies, would that be allowable and okay if utilities were sized appropriately and the infrastructure could support it? Sounds like we're open to that. Rural lodging, you know, our moderate density, most built environment, and again, 20 people per acre, so highest amount of density when we actually look at that. We don't talk about it like you say, we look at it as in units in campgrounds. On the rural lodging, why we've got the 20 people per acre is because we have people recreating at events outside on the property doing things. So we wanna look at like so that's why we're looking at that degree of impact. When we look at another thought, maybe Jason, to think about on developed and modern campgrounds, it's very transient, they're kind of come in, they're pretty self-contained. If they're gonna go out and recreate, they usually do it out and away from the facility. So it's really kind of, I mean, they may have a campfire, they may listen to music, they might go to some facilities on the site, but generally rural lodging is where you're gonna go to a wedding, where you're gonna go to do those things. So we're more thinking about the impact of people per acre on that site moreover. So a little bit different impact, we think. But wanna make sure that that resonates with everyone. And then event facilities are the same. So that same type of density, as long as there's that permanent infrastructure to support it. Lots of pathways to look at this accessory event use and temporary use. So that's all certainly still options. Questions, thoughts, you think we're on the right track?
These are good changes.
Okay.
They set out what your options are very clearly.
Awesome. I think this is where I turn it over to Melissa, but right before we do this, do you mind if we take our sample code? I just wanna go through, I'm just gonna name them really quick. Every single one of these, when we start talking about standards, we look at site selection criteria. We're gonna talk about, in each of these different uses, what type of site can sustain this type of use. So you're gonna get parameters of what that means. We're gonna look at the size and density, we've talked a lot about that tonight, but that's part of the standards. We're gonna talk about what the setback requirements are, so we mitigate impact from these different uses. The beginning on the degree of impact, you're gonna see that that's a little bit big, a greater distance in some areas than others. We talked about the water supply, we talked about the sanitary waste, we talked about that tonight. Melissa's gonna talk to you about emergency planning and operations. We talk about building codes and utilities. We talk about what's allowable for accessory use. We talk about noise and refuse disposal, access, lighting. Just to give you an idea, yeah, what your favorite things. So we talk about dark skies and one of your favorite things. And just to give you an idea, so all of these things we apply those type of standards to all of the uses too. Let's take it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and I think we're doing a good job at making it clear what's required, because some of the language before was a little ambiguous. So this is a placeholder for our emergency management plan. You know, now that the fire has subsided enough that our emergency partners are available, we'll talk through this with them. But making sure we have some sort of incident action plan, an evacuation plan. We've talked to them for a while, OEM, about satellite communications. How do they know where people are? How do we let people know if there's an incident who are, outside of cell range? And then looking at probably additional emergency resources depending on how remote that area is. Because some of these, we're talking everything from backcountry to things that are like our rural lodging, so very different needs. And then we have done quite a bit of look at what the US Forest Service does in terms of how they manage what a maximum capacity is. Because when we entered into this, I really wanted someone to tell us what a good number would be. Like, can you quantify for us how we know when there's too many people? And it doesn't really work that way, of course. It has a lot more to do with what are the roads that are available. One of the questions that get raised a lot is, when is their secondary means of access really important? What if that's not available? And I think those are the really hard questions that come before you all, and that we have to work through. Is sort of what is the capacity? But the Forest Service has been doing this a long time and has some good direction. So that's kind of our emergency management kind of spectrum of issues. And Anne mentioned at the beginning, the conditional use is that those regulations will be modified. When the regulations come to you, you will see this, so that we have a minor amendment process as well as a major amendment. And so that 10% is pretty common, I would say, throughout codes, maybe a best practice, you could say. But looking at 10% increase, is that in the size, the location of, if they've mapped out certain uses on the property or the way they're gonna do it, and they're modifying that in a sort of 10% size, intensity, configuration, that kind of thing. So we'll be specific enough that we can apply that very clearly. And again, that's an administrative approval. And again, no previous minor modifications. We don't want people to just sort of add up 10% once a year for 5 years. You get the idea. So we've needed this for a long time. So this will be a good tool to have. And then we kind of starting or ending in the same place. Here we are in August. We're gonna complete our stakeholder engagement as well as our public engagement, and work toward refining this draft. This discussion tonight's been very helpful as we get through August and September in preparation for October, when we plan on the adoption of the new regulations. So, I think that covers it.
So to put this in context for me,
Yes.
how many of these types of facilities have been proposed over the last 10 years? Or do you see it changing with time?
What have we seen, 10 over the last 2 or 3 years, probably?
We probably had, we're seeing an uptick in the interest in doing these.
Well, like the glamping thing with creating like the domes, so like, all of that has become a very trend-setting newer thing, I think, so I think that I would attribute that to the majority of the uptick is like that's a more affordable way to put something like this together rather than building a motel or building a hotel. So I think there's been a lot of
And that post-COVID, sort of everybody wants to get out and move around and in the high country and.
Well, there's some of these we have some special event people up here that are doing a really good job with different events and as projects like the Mudges and Climax Revival kind of stuff starts to get off the ground, we'll see more people looking at doing that as well.
And it's almost been, I think it's been actually all exclusive to group camps. I think everything that I've done in the last 13 years has been group camps. But group camps was kind of this catch-all and it wasn't really well defined and the industry was evolving and our code didn't, we were saying, glamping wasn't a thing, tiny homes weren't a thing, all these different temporary lodging units. So it's just been an industry that has really taken off. And so we were just kind of trying to make things fit in and it's like, well, how do you universally apply this? Well, we were trying to kind of do it a bit case by case, which is the worst way to do, in one way you can do that site specific. But applying the regulations, they should be very transparent and very user friendly.
Yeah.
And we were having to make a lot of interpretations. And that's not a great space to be in, so we want them to be very intentional and supportive. And particularly, group camp was somewhere that needed some work to be able to be sustainable and really support our local economy. So that's one of the big goals coming out of this.
Do you think this will encourage or be neutral to these kinds of developments?
Yeah, that's, something we'll kind of watch, but I think that our goal and our hope is that it'll incentivize, it'll be an easier pathway for small business to develop and to test their market before they make large investments in capital infrastructure. So hopefully they're more resilient, more supportive, and we can incentivize, we're really trying to support those economic development goals of providing more lodging. And so, we also, we look at the rural lodging model and, we still want those higher densities to be closer to the city periphery and the city or on the periphery. Definitely we're hopeful and we'll be monitoring it to see how it's doing. But we also saw something that we felt like we had to protect in the backcountry.
Well, and this will drive development toward more appropriate land.
locations.
And will eliminate a lot of those people, well, I can buy a really cheap parcel, how do we make it pay? This eliminates a lot of that, which will be a good thing, and help protect backcountry and help make it easier for us to defend, if and when we need to do that.
Exactly, it just, knowing the resources that it takes or the events, now after this lived experience that we've had, I think it just really supports those goals that we felt were really strong in the beginning before this, but now I really think that this is intended to make sure that we're not encouraging development in areas that we don't have the resources to support or that, we could do long-lasting damage.
It's good, you guys, you put a lot of
Yeah,
work
thank
into it.
you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's
Obvious that you got a lot of thought.
Great.
unrelated, the comp plan being adopted, that's still on.
Coming.
Yes, we just got the
Okay.
draft of, that's a good, that probably was one update, I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet, today, but we got the draft in of the strategic growth plan, from EPS. So, I do think that, do we have anything set for time
Tomorrow
next week?
morning, we're talking to our project management team, but to come back here. We don't have it set up yet, so we can look at our next
Yeah, I don't think
agenda.
that we have an application being heard, for the second.
No, well, yes, we do. We have one, yes, one.
So you have a backcountry site plan that's coming up, but that probably is a great agenda for us to just bring the standards. You've heard everything else, now let's, kind of look at how do we look at the impacts and have we properly mitigated the impacts of all this use? So that'd be kind of our focus for our next discussion on this. And we could also bring the draft, we can get this out to you, of the strategic growth plan.
Yeah.
Really looking at infill versus greenfield development, obviously, we already know that infill is more cost effective and easier to support, but we needed to do a little bit more work around that to meet our statutory obligations for our comp plan. So we'll get that information out to you, 'cause we just got it.
We know that we've needed to then integrate it into the documents. It's gotta go back to DOLA, DOLA needs to bless it. And so that's why we don't have a hearing date, cause all these things need to move a little bit, but I imagine it'll be October.
Yeah, that's what we're shooting for,
Yeah.
is somewhere in there, we're synced with the city, they've gotta go back and do a bit of an amendment. Just because we got a little ahead of the strategic growth plan, so now we decided that the best thing to do is just kind of take a minute. DOLA's already queued up, they've already reviewed our comp plan, we got that feedback, really great feedback, but there were a couple of things on this. So they're poised and ready to put it back through the review process, but not the whole plan, just the strategic growth part. So, we're almost there with that.
Hopefully late October, cause I'm not here in the first half of October.
Oh, right, well,
Be
we
there.
will,
Oh, that's good to know.
Well, you
Yeah.
have our dates already, up through October, I think,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
that's good.
And
We'll
if-
look at those.
yeah, again, just another plug, and if anyone knows somebody that would love to serve on the planning commission, we'd love to get them in and get them interviewed, so. See if you've got anyone that you think would like to make that commitment. Did you have anything for us, Matt?
No?
Okay.
It's good, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Sure not.
Yeah, it looks like a really well thought out changes.
Okay, great, good, all right, that's all this has.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second, do we even, I guess we get started. Yes, I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Hey.
Well done, everybody. Thank you.
Roll call.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm like waving and I don't have my video on. Oh my God. Hi. Bye.
Thanks for not saying us to go to sleep.
Yeah, you were riveting.
Thank you for that.